Digital products were just around 198,000. Memberships, 421,000. Sponsorship was 142,000. Affiliates was 30,000. Royalties was 29,000. And services was 11,000. It's been like a slow grind for 8 years. I identified this limiting belief I had that I was not a creative person. Anytime I wanted to make something, I had to collaborate with a team of people, and it was never exactly what I wanted it to be.
How you're able to grow a community, make it as strong as possible in terms of engagement.
The problem with a lot of online communities, especially in the creator space, is...
What's up, Jay? Thanks for joining us on the One of TED podcast.
Love to be here.
Super hyped to talk with you. Everything around growth on social media, community, and all about revenue monetization. You know, you're the expert in all of that, so we're going to deep dive into it.
Sounds great.
First, I want to know, how did you go from like 0 to millions of views and millions in revenue? Where did it all start?
You know, I like to remind people that I've been doing this for 8 years at this point. And at no point has it felt like there was some magic inflection point where things went crazy. It's been like a slow grind for 8 years.
Nice. Yeah.
Started in 2017. I started writing an email newsletter because I identified this limiting belief I had that I was not a creative person. And so I had a coach encourage me to turn that belief on its head. And he said, basically, what if the opposite was true? What if you actually were a creative person? What would you do if that was true? And I said, well, I like writing. I'd probably write more. And so just in an exercise to prove myself wrong, I started writing and publishing every day for a year. That was my goal.
About what?
Whatever I could come up with that day. It was not narrowed to a single topic. It was very much like journaling. And I would try to be helpful and tell like a story, but I mean, it wasn't very good.
How many subscribers did you have like over that year?
I had a couple of hundred. I had a couple of hundred. So like it wasn't nothing. For 2017, that was something. And it was mostly people that were local to Columbus, Ohio, here where I live, because they had built a connection with me through some local event that I run or something, you know?
Okay, is that how they came across your newsletter? They would go to the event and then you would promote the newsletter type thing?
It was more like we would meet in an event, and then a lot of times we'd become friends on Facebook. Like I had thousands of Facebook friends, which was just not normal in 2017, because I would meet people and I would add them on Facebook.
Right.
Like that's the way I would do it.
Back in the days.
LinkedIn wasn't, I mean, I was adding people on LinkedIn too, but only if they were like professionals, you know, and I was organizing startup weekend events. There were people like me, and I would just add them on Facebook because I felt like we were friends. And I would write on Facebook that I was writing, and I would share the essays on my website on Facebook, and then people would subscribe, and that was pretty much it.
Because you were in the startup world, right? I think you joined and sold a startup called Tixers. Would you say that experience helped?
Well, it definitely helped shape me for sure, because, you know, at the time when I was in college, startups were the big sexy thing. Like this is like prime time, Y Combinator, Uber, Airbnb, Facebook type of time frame. And so startups were sexy, startups were in. That's what I thought entrepreneurship was. And so I got really into that culture in college. And then after college, I joined a co-founder, and we put together this company, Tixers, this ticketing company. And we went through an accelerator. We raised some money. We eventually sold that company. It was a miserable experience at the end after we sold. And so it shaped me in a lot of ways. It told me, like, well, one, I had to run everything on the product side. Product and customer service, that was all me. And my co-founder would do, like, legal, accounting, hiring, the money stuff. Like, he was classic CEO role. And I learned a lot about software and products. And I also learned a lot about what the reality of running a tech startup was. And I kind of didn't want to do that again. So I joined another company in a product capacity, and it was it was a venture-backed Series C company when I joined in healthcare. And I hated that because I hated having a boss, and I didn't like the way the company was going. Yeah. So that's when I went out on my own in 2017, and I thought I would freelance. And I started coming across people who were like professionally writing emails and selling info products. And I was like, this is interesting. This is also a product. It's not software, but it's a product. And the hard thing about software was I can't code. I didn't have really any design chops at the time. So anytime I wanted to make something in the software world, I had to collaborate with a team of people, and it was never exactly what I wanted it to be. But for writing and info products, I could make whatever I wanted. And it was, like, my only limitations were my own imagination and whatever skills I lacked.
It's funny, we have a similar path.
What were you doing before 1 of 10?
Oof, so many things. Basically, I was in the startup world as well, just trying startups back then, mobile apps, also AI startup. We raised a little money there as well. That was back in 2014.
Same time frame.
Some succeeded, some flopped, and then basically went all in 2020 in the YouTube space.
Yeah, same time frame. I mean, it was a cool time to be in the startup world. We were never like a startup darling. I mean, we were kind of really well respected in the region we were building because there wasn't a whole lot happening there. Like, we were technically based in Kentucky because we went through an accelerator that was mostly related to Cincinnati, but was literally based in Covington, Kentucky, across the river. And there was like nobody doing startups in Kentucky. So like at one point they put up a billboard for us, like congratulating us on our exit. And we're like, this is wild. This is wild.
So then from there, a couple hundred emails on your subscribers count. And then how do you go from there?
Publishing every day is really hard. And also not a lot of people want to get an email from you every day. So I eventually, after that first year, when I completed the challenge of publishing every day, because that was a challenge I gave myself, kind of pared back to publishing every week instead. And honestly, like, I just did that for 3 years. Along the way, I realized I need to make money somehow. And I was introduced to the concept of mastermind groups. Mm-hmm. And somebody basically said, hey, if I had your network of business owners, I would facilitate mastermind groups because that's valuable. People would pay for it, and I think you'd be good at it. So I just started doing that. I started putting together these small mastermind groups. I would run, I mean, it was kind of an early cohort-based course, honestly. It was a group of 5 people plus me. I would run 3 groups in tandem, and I would do 3 cycles of that per year. And it was just enough to pay my bills. And it's also really hard to get people into the program because it's just a hard thing to market if you don't know what a mastermind group is. So I learned a lot about sales during this period. And the nice thing was I was essentially working with 15 to 20 clients at a time, but I would interact with them in 3 one-hour sessions throughout the week. So my hourly rate was actually very high, and it gave me a lot of time to figure out what else I wanted to do with my time, to study, to create, and it was a good model for a few years.
Between 2017 and 2020, correct?
Correct.
And then how do you grow from there to the next step?
So 2020, pandemic happened, you may remember, and Pat Flynn's business partner, Matt, had gone through one of my mastermind programs. He had since joined Pat at Smart Passive Income, and they decided they're going to prioritize building online community. And because they had experienced the online community that I had done, they hired me as a consultant to help them set that up. It was like literally pre-public versions of Circle. Like it was a private beta of Circle because Matt and Pat were advisors. So we built out the first version of SPI's SPI Pro membership in 2020. We hired a community manager, and then they asked if I would lead their community team. And I said, well, I got this mastermind thing. I don't really have time. They said, well, what if we purchase that mastermind program from you? We bring your people into our community, and you lead our community team. And I said, that sounds pretty good, but I also will continue creating content on the side. And I want to make sure that you are okay with me continuing to build my own business, create my own content. And I said they were. So we worked through that deal. I started full-time in January of 2021 with SPI, and in September of 2021, I was kind of at a boiling point where my content business was growing a lot, and I was full-time leading a team. I couldn't do both. So I gave them like 3 months notice that I was going to be going back out on my own. Went back on my own in January of 2022, launched my community March of 2022, and now the lab has been my biggest revenue driver in the creator science business since that time. And, you know, lots of things happened along the way, like rebranded the company to Creator Science sometime around mid 2022. It was called Creative Companion before that. The podcast was called Creative Elements. I rebranded both those things to Creator Science and Name in 2022/2023. Mm-hmm. Then I did a visual rebrand this past year, and it feels like things are really picking up now that I'm operating under that brand, that I have this visual identity, that I've gotten a lot better at creating content. We've taken on YouTube starting in July of 2022. So, you know, again, it's just been like a slow incremental build, and a lot of times, depending on the platforms you're operating on, your audience growth is like person by person. It's just slow. And you get to a point where it starts to compound a little bit, and I feel like I'm just hitting that point now.
I mean, that's what every creator or business people in the end needs to understand is there's no overnight success. It's all after years and years and years of trying things in one way. Maybe that way doesn't fail, and then you'll go in another direction, but with the learnings of the previous experience. And then and that's how you build up a new floor, let's say. And we'll deep dive more into your growth in the past year. You're very public with your revenue. And before getting into that, let me tell you about how the 1 of 10 strategy team can help you grow your channel much faster and make more money. Our team has directly worked with over 100 YouTubers to grow their channels by optimizing their content, focusing on the right strategies. So for example, here's a video idea, title, and thumbnail that we crafted for Mike Shake that ended up getting 22 million views and being his most popular video of all time. Another example is the content strategy we built for Callaway, helping him go from 0 to 70,000 subscribers and grow a 6-figure business on top of that. And those are only just 2 of many creators the team has worked with in the past 6 years. So if you're ready to take your channel to the next level in the next 90 days with daily support, video reviews, winning ideas, titles, and thumbnails, and even 2 calls per month to answer all your questions, head over to oneoften.com/strategy to book a call. But first, I want to talk about your Unreal Collective community, right? It was so good that it got sold.
When you sell a community business that does not have MRR, because basically I was selling a one-time purchase, right? It was this 12-week experience, and there was no recurring revenue on the back end of that. I just had like this community space where it's basically like, if you're an alumni of this experience, I want to keep you engaged and continue supporting you in this way. But to another business, there's not a ton of value there, at least not from a revenue perspective. So basically, we priced it at 1 times expected revenue. It was basically like, if I continue to run this business next year, here's how much I could earn. So if you pay me that, then I will not do it, and I'll work for your company instead. And we did that based on the revenue, like an average of the revenue for the last 3 years. So it wasn't like life-changing money by any means.
How did you come to the conclusion of making that type of agreement, right? You could have done it in so many ways. How was that process? I'm curious of selling.
You have to figure out what is the value to the acquirer, you know? And really, the value to them was like, we want you to work full-time. It was an acqui-hire. Right. And so they kind of put it back to me, and they're like, what is the value to you? Like, what would it take for us to acquire that? And it was kind of a back and forth of, if I propose something, they'd have to say, does that make financial sense to us? And if not, we'll kind of get there. We both operated in a lot of good faith, you know? And we just kind of came to a shared agreement of, this is worthwhile to you. This is a risk we're willing to take on as the acquiring company and move forward.
Interesting. Because, yeah, we've had offers of acqui-hire for 1 of 10. But I think like you, I hate having a boss. And I don't think I could make it happen.
It would be a completely different world for you, because you have recurring revenue. There's like a lot better precedent for this style business, like a software business with recurring revenue. You guys are operating at a several times multiple, most likely, if you're looking at an acquisition offer. And even then, you know, a lot of people in your shoes, the regret comes in the selling. Like, there are few people who regret having not sold, and there are a lot of people who regret having sold. Because not even the amount of money that was made, but after you sell, like what's next? You know, can you find something that gives you as much joy and fulfillment and purpose? Or do you just sit on a pile of money and say, okay, now I have to do the very hard thing of finding something else I care about working on and spending my time on again? So, you know, even with just pricing like client services, the thing I always tell everybody is you need to make sure that you're excited about the deal before everything after the deal happens, because if not, you've already lost. Like, you have to make sure you're excited at the beginning. And if you're not, then you shouldn't do it, because you rarely get more excited as time goes on.
Yeah, I agree. Like, I was asked, like, would I sell for $1 million? I said no directly. Then I was asked, would you sell for 10 million? And I said no directly. Because what you said is true. Like, this is fun. Like, I would not be able to talk with you, for example. Let's say I had $10 million. There would not be a way to talk with you and discuss and spend the hour together talking about interesting stuff. And this is cool because it gives value to people, to the viewers. And so yeah, I totally get you.
Yeah, it's a trip when people start offering you money for a thing. You're like, whoa, what? How do I value this? Like, even outside of how you value it in your business, like, how do I value this in all ways? And, you know, as I've become more successful in business, $1 million is less money than I thought like a few years ago. Depending on like where you're investing, what you have to support, like $1 million doesn't go as far as you think initially. It's not like retire forever money, you know. And yeah, you just got to make sure you're at peace with it, whatever the decision is.
Is there a number that you have in mind already that is a retire forever type thing?
No, I mean, the style of business I'm running, we don't have the same type of enterprise value that software does. Like, I would have to reshape the company fundamentally to build it in a way where I could really maximize the value to a third party, which is possible. Yeah. But right now, I enjoy, as you said, like, it's a vehicle for a lot of experiences that you just wouldn't have without the vehicle. This is why there are a lot of people who have like FU money, more money than they could ever want, and they're like, I want to start a YouTube channel.
Yeah,
because it's like, why? Well, because like there's some things money can't buy. Money doesn't necessarily buy you the respect or time from busy people that you admire. Like, people really respect the work product of somebody else, and when you're working on something interesting, it just opens up doors that just having money does not, unless you are investing or, you know, doing philanthropy. But yeah, there is just something about having proof of work of something that is interesting that is a magnet for opportunities, that when that proof of work goes away, you're just kind of another person with money. And there's actually a lot of those. Yeah,
I don't know if you saw the recent video of the guy that sold for $100 million the watch company Movement, MVMT, and the title is something like I sold for $100 million and I'm lost now, or something like that. And the video is about him wanting to go into the YouTube world and create movies, I guess.
Super interesting. I haven't seen the video. I saw like a Reddit post and I deduced eventually this is MVMT. I did see that, and there's like a lot of stories of that, man. I mean, I think a lot of people, as humans, we have a lot of needs. Like, we want to have fun. We want to find fulfillment in our work. We want to find joy in our work. We want to be loved. All of these needs, and a lot of people kind of pile those needs on the back of building a business. It kind of like fills the hole for them. And then when that business is gone, like, the hole's still there. It sucks. It's like you gotta fill that hole outside of the business, or, you know, the business won't really solve it. It'll like cover the hole. It won't actually fill the hole. It'll cover the hole. And then if you get rid of it, it's just still there.
I often say as well, YouTube is one of the most fun path one could take in his life ever. Like, when you think about it, what I think strongly is that YouTube correlates with the amount of time you put in. Like we said earlier, like, even if it takes years, at least if you put the time and you put the time to optimize, then both combined will lead to like some growth, at least in whatever niche. And then from there, then it allows you to meet interesting people, creative, smart. And it also leads to unique experiences that you would never have gotten. And like business and all types of angles that makes it one of the most fun, I think. Like, I cannot think of other path that could be more fun.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I would even expand it out to like any creative project. It doesn't even have to be YouTube. It could be like any creative project. And the same thing applies.
True,
you know,
true,
people
true.
who are just writers get a lot of the same experience. Different audience potentially, but same experience. The magic thing about YouTube is just the sheer scale of it and how good the recommendation engine is.
Yes.
There's just a higher likelihood that you will attract a larger audience to you faster than basically any other platform.
Exactly. And part of this world of content creation is community. So you did your time at SPI Pro. You built I think, over 200,000 member community. I want to know more about how you're able to grow a community, how you're able to make it as strong as possible in terms of engagement.
This is a huge topic. It's very hard to share, or like hard to tackle in one go. SPI Pro, while I was there, we never had more than 700 members.
Oh,
and,
okay.
We launched a second community called the SPI Academy, which was like a community space for course students, because SPI has been selling courses for forever. It was a huge course business. Mm-hmm. And we had thousands of members in the academy. So in total, you know, we were serving somewhere between 4,000 and 5,000 members, I think.
Which is a lot, by the way.
It is a lot. It's a whole lot, because when I think about online communities, you really have to properly set expectations for what the experience will be, so that when people come in, you know what experience to deliver, and everybody is satisfied. The problem with a lot of online communities, especially in the creator space, is people think, I have a large audience, community platforms exist, let me just throw the two together and community will happen. And it's actually a really bad experience, because if you don't think through, what does participation look like? What should people expect to get out of the effort they put into this space? And how do I properly set expectations? If you don't think about that, people will kind of make their own assumptions. And a lot of those assumptions are going to be incorrect. You're not going to know what they're hoping from the space, and you're not going to be able to do it. And then people get upset and they leave. So I think about communities as like the spectrum between, is this leading with premium content, or is this leading with peer-to-peer interaction? You know, is this about connecting and having conversations with others, or is this about getting privileged access to material that is otherwise not available? And most communities have like some aspect of both. But if you are on the side of peer-to-peer interaction, scaling a community becomes very, very difficult, because peer-to-peer interaction thrives when people feel like they belong in the space. Mm-hmm. And you feel like you belong in the space when you feel connected to other people in the space. And the larger the total number of people there, the harder it is for somebody to feel connected and not like they're just a number. You know, it's like walking into a room that has 10 people in it versus walking into an auditorium with 700 people in it. Where are you going to feel more comfortable and more like you are a part of this and not just a number inside this space? So as a community grows, you basically need to create this. It's like a system of concentric circles, where you have the huge circle at the outside. This is everybody. And then you want to create smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller experiences where people can connect with each other in smaller rooms, so they feel connected to the space as a whole. And that's a logistically, operationally, socially difficult thing to do. And not just do, but maintain. Because communities, unlike SaaS, you don't like build a feature that just works. Like, communities can be really good, and then they can quickly be not good, just because people stop showing up or actually leave. It's never done. You have to continue to foster and cultivate the space that people find value in, or eventually it just starts slipping and slipping and slipping, and it's hard to recover once the story in the community is, this is getting worse. That's a very hard thing to maintain, because you have to really care. And if this is not your primary product offering, people tend to not care enough
Would you say it's the primary offering of creator science right now?
Yes, for sure.
Okay.
It's about 60% of our revenue, but 20% of our revenue is sponsorship. So if you look at our direct forms of monetization, meaning products and services that we offer, the lab is basically 75% of our direct revenue.
Maybe more in details, how do you make it happen that they're engaged between each other inside creator science? And maybe you can tell the viewers as well, how many members are there?
So we have 3 tiers of membership. There's basic, standard, and VIP. Standard and VIP came first. That's like the core member experience. There's an application. You have to be eligible to join that. And typically we're looking for somebody that's earning $10,000 per month of product revenue, or sponsorship revenue, but like creator revenue, I guess I'll say, or have an audience of 10,000 plus on a single platform. Kind of a high bar. So people who weren't able to make that bar, we created the basic tier, which is trying to help people get to that point. In total, between those 3 tiers, it's about 350 members, 150 of which are on the basic tier.
Do you still have that cap of 200?
No, we used to have a cap of 200 members because I thought having a small group was the only way to maintain this closeness I was talking about.
Yeah.
And it certainly makes it easier. But number one, that 200 number was kind of arbitrary. I think directionally correct, but kind of arbitrary. I think I could have the same exact experience in the same exact community closer to 300 members. But even if I got to like 400 or 500 members, I think I could design the experience where we maintained closeness. So we removed the cap and moved towards an application model with those eligibility criteria I was sharing. But we've still stuck around 200 members, mostly because I marketed the cap so well that people think that we have a cap and we're full. So it's something that I'm like trying to undo in people's minds, but it's actually been very challenging.
Do you regret that decision of capping to 200 if you had to come back for?
I don't know. I think it served a purpose. I think it might have helped us get to a certain point that we are, but yeah, it's been really hard to undo. Even current members, when they don't renew, they're like, hey, I'm not using this as much as I used to, and I know the spot would be more valuable to somebody else. It's like,
you're like,
well,
no, it's free.
We don't have a cap anymore. So like what I actually know you're saying is I don't want to hurt your feelings, but I'm leaving, and that's okay. But like the fact that even current members still think we have a cap is a messaging problem.
What's churn like for a business like this?
I was just looking at this, and it looks like we have about 30% churn year over year, so 70% retention.
Okay,
it's an annual only membership. So like on a monthly basis, Stripe doesn't report ARR very well. Like Stripe reports on monthly metrics, even though it's annual only. So I have to kind of contrive some of this because Stripe tells me like you average about 3% churn per month, but
right.
You multiply that by 12, I guess is the way to do it. So it's somewhere between 30 and 36% churn year over year.
Have you done anything in the past few years that you've seen an increase in retention for a community?
I actually think that changing who we accept into the community has been good for retention for a couple of reasons. Number one of the reasons that people leave the community is because they give up on being a creator. If you give up, there's no reason to continue paying for something that is helping you as a creator. The other thing I found, the community is priced at basically $2,000 per year on the standard tier. And I thought having that price point would be a natural filter for who would join because $2,000 a year is not cheap. And for you to make that expense, like you probably need some pretty serious revenue coming in each year as a creator. But what I found was it was fairly effective, but not effective enough. And we would have some folks who would join who just weren't quite at the stage of most of the other members. And when you have this like spectrum of where people are in their journey, over time, it drifts towards the lowest end of that spectrum. Because the less advanced folks are typically a little bit more active, asking more questions. So optically, the more advanced folks seems like most of the conversations here are earlier stage. Maybe this isn't for me. So in adding an application and kind of increasing the requirements over time. I think we've held on to a lot of our more advanced members a little bit more, and it also allows us to tailor our content and programming towards that member as well. When I was at SPI, one thing that really helped us with retention that I think I'm going to start rolling out in our community this year as well is pairing together mastermind groups within the community. Obviously a skill set of mine because that's where I started. What's interesting when we did that, at least at SPI, we saw participation in the forum decrease, but retention increased. Because the way people were deriving value, first and foremost, was in their small groups, and they needed the forum less because of that. So when you do that, the experience and retention for people in a mastermind increases, but then the experience and retention for people not in a mastermind, I think, actually risks decreasing because there might be less content in the community for them to engage with.
I can see that. So you know Creator now?
Yes.
Like I was from there from season 1, and to this day I still talk to people. I would talk to from groups, from in DMs or like those small groups that would get created. And but I would never talk publicly. So I think what you said fits with me, actually. I don't really like to talk in public channels, but like in groups, I love meeting people, understanding who they are, and just learning from them, and they learn from me. That's the best, actually.
Isn't this interesting, though? Because even in Creator now, that is a private network. And so you're using the word talking publicly, because the perception is there are a lot of people in this private network who could see this. But that's exactly what I'm talking about with as a group scales, it's challenging to engage certain like personalities of people because they feel like this is too public, even though, again, it's technically a private network.
Do you have like activities or stuff like that, or accountability stuff that you guys do to connect people inside the group? How do you guys do it?
We have lots of live sessions. So every week I host what we call an Ask the Lab Anything. It used to be called Office Hours, but that was like, come ask Jay a question. And I try to make it more like, come ask the community a question, because yes, I'm there and I'm leading it, but there are other people here who are just as accomplished as I am who can also help with this. So we do one of those each week. We do what I call a hot seat a couple times per month, and that's a one-on-one coaching call between me and another member, but it's hosted publicly in the community. Then we have like specific topic sessions we'll do sometimes, like we've done YouTube channel roasts in the past. Sometimes we bring in guest workshops, people from outside the community. Sometimes we do member-led workshops, so people inside the community. So there's a lot of live sessions that we do in there. We have this automated tool for making one-to-one introductions, and so that runs every 3 weeks. It'll introduce a couple people together.
Oh, how is that for them?
It's good. It's good. People who will opt into that really, really like it. What I don't do is auto-opt everybody into it, because the worst thing that could happen is I get a one-to-one introduction and that person just doesn't respond.
Exactly.
So we've got about 25% of the overall membership participating in that. And the ratings on that, it's a 9 out of 10 in terms of people's satisfaction on that. So that's working pretty well. Whenever somebody...
You said a tool?
Yes. It's a tool. It's called Matcha, M-A-T-C-H-A. Matcha.so. It's a third-party tool. I hope that Circle introduces something natively. I know Mighty Networks is doing this now, and I think Circle will probably do their own version of it at some point. I hope they do anyway. When somebody joins, they typically introduce themselves, and they typically do it in video, and that's a good experience for other members to get to know them quickly, and I will usually respond and try to tag a couple people that I think would be a good person to know for them. And then, most of the activity in the forum, it's just member-led topics or questions. And so there's lots of connections in that way. But it's challenging because even in that space, it's fairly small in that 200 members isn't a huge community, but it's very active relative to other communities. But the thing is, when you have a space that gets really active, people start to feel overwhelmed by notifications. So they turn their notifications off. When they turn their notifications off, now we get fewer people responding to things. And you have to introduce notifications. You have to say, hey, if you're missing out on this, if you want to get reintegrated, here's how to do it. Because a lot of times a community is out of sight, out of mind if you haven't built an association of like, okay, when I have a problem, I go here first. Once you build that association, it's easy for people to come back and kind of participate. But if you haven't built that and you've turned off your notifications, it's very easy to just slip away.
Where do they come from? Like, how are you getting your leads to come in?
About 60% of people come from the podcast.
Wow. Podcast video only or podcast
audio?
Consider audio. Oh, audio only. Okay.
Yeah. Increasingly, we're getting more people mention YouTube in their application, so that's starting to pick up. But I would say that those two platforms drive 70 to 80% of new members.
60% from audio? Wow. Okay,
yeah.
I didn't know there was that big of a difference.
Yeah, I mean, well, I just think the listener behavior is different than viewer behavior. Yeah. Our YouTube audience is larger in terms of how many people view a video, but a viewer is not necessarily a repeat viewer. Like you have, most of our viewers are new viewers. In podcasting, almost all of our listeners are repeat listeners. So it's like we've spent a lot of time together, essentially, because even if you look at retention curves in audio versus video is night and day difference. Like in video, huge drop off within the first 30 seconds and then a small number of people complete it. In audio, it's like darn near a straight line. Like if you're listening to the podcast, you finish listening to the podcast. So it's wild, but people who listen in audio just spend a lot more time with me and they hear about the lab, they know my perspective, they know how I teach, they know how I talk, and so it's a natural next step for them.
Oh man, I need to go on Spotify and Apple then. Where which platforms are you on? Like what would you say has the most listeners conversion?
Apple and Spotify are basically 50-50. Like they're the same size. Spotify is a tad larger now. And then I would say that if you look at the overall split, it's probably like 40% Apple, 45% Spotify, 15% everything else, YouTube not included.
But how does one grow on those platforms?
It's really, really hard. Because you have to push people from elsewhere, or word of mouth has to bring people in. But like, what do
you mean by push from elsewhere?
Meaning that like podcasting doesn't really have discovery.
Exactly.
Word of mouth is the only discovery. So if you are going to get people to your podcast, you have to like take attention that you've gathered elsewhere and say, go to my podcast. I have a podcast. So like I am constantly talking about the podcast in my emails, a little bit on social media. I try to move people from social media and YouTube to email. And then over time, I try to just beat them over the head with the fact that a podcast exists. And slowly, a few people drip in.
Smart funnel. Yeah, and it works.
Sort of. But I mean, I send an email to 60,000 people twice a week, and the podcast audience is like 30,000 downloads per month. So, it could really, really work better. But people either like podcasts or they don't. If they don't listen to podcasts, it doesn't matter how many times you email them. Like a podcast just isn't for them.
Me, I found you through YouTube, and I would download your videos when I would go on planes and listen to pods. So that's an insight.
It's crazy to me. We've asked our audience a couple times, like, how do you listen to the show? Because we see how many people are listening on mobile, and so many of them are like, well, I just put the audio on, like it's in my pocket. It's while I'm doing this. It's while I'm doing that. It makes sense. But then I say, did you know that we have an audio-only podcast that publishes 2 to 3 times as many episodes as our YouTube channel? And they say, yeah, but I don't care. Like, I only listen on YouTube. It's just wild to me. It's like, it's the same activity. It's listening to an audio-only podcast, and you can get more of what you've told me you like. But people like what they like. Like, if they like YouTube and they don't listen to podcasts outside of YouTube, they just won't do it.
I've never listened to podcasts in my life.
This is crazy to me. Why not? Why not?
I think I know why. It's what you said. People are used to one platform, right? And just changing a platform is insane. Basically, it's like a totally new. It's like going from Discord to Slack or Slack to Discord. It's like such a huge step.
I
for
suppose.
anybody.
I see it. I see it. It's hard for me to relate to because I'm active on all these things. It's the same with like social media too. You know, like I used to think, well, I can't publish the same thing on LinkedIn that I put in my newsletter because then the people who are on both, like, they're gonna be annoyed. The thing is, like, almost nobody is on all of these platforms following you.
Indeed.
They're following you in one place, and so it's crazy to me. Viewer behavior is very interesting.
Yeah. Or another insight is, so I had never gone on Twitter before 2022, just because I didn't have a reason to, or I would just be on YouTube or Reddit or all the other social media platforms. But then I was like, this would be good to have a presence, and that changed my life. It's interesting to think that if I had never gone on Twitter, basically I would never have found my co-founder. I would for One of 10. I would never have met literally hundreds of people in real life because of it, and so many things. But it's all because I was stuck on other platforms. But going to Twitter was so tough, and the only reason I did is because on Discord I told the group, like, I'm gonna post every day for 30 days, or I'm gonna give $100 to someone here. But that literally changed my life.
Crazy.
That's one insight. The other insight is One of 10 now has only been let's say promoted through Twitter or YouTube, but like Instagram and TikTok, like nothing, which is something we want to try. But then sometimes I'll talk to people from there and they've never heard of One of 10 because they've never gone on Twitter. And
crazy.
So yeah, it's interesting too.
Do you guys share any of your metrics publicly?
No, but I mean, I can tell you now if you want. What do you want to know?
I'm curious to know if you're willing to share like MRR. That's really interesting to me, or number of customers. That would be really interesting. I'm just curious to see the scale you guys are at now.
Yeah, for sure. But basically, 60,000 euro, so like 60-ish, basically 60K USD MRR is is the software. But I also have an agency, the strategy work that we do, optimizing one-on-one with creators, and that's another 50 to 60, I think.
Crazy
thing. So yeah, about 120K.
How do you manage your time between those two things?
Yeah, basically, I'd say a lot of my time recently, in the past year, actually has been on the tool, because I have a lead strategist, I would say 2 lead strategists working on the agency, and they're like running things really well. Maybe you've seen Vexian on Twitter.
I have, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So him and Ollie is the other one, and they're killers basically. Everyone in the team is killer. So it's been there. It hasn't grown much, but that's something I want to change this year to bring that up to at least 100K MRR and bring the tool at least 100K MRR. That's the goal. But we'll see. Well, to be honest, the goal is actually $10 million this year, but we'll see.
That's crazy. That's huge. I love that.
Because well, I'll give you a quick rundown of like what's my vision of things, right? So there's 4 things. One is the agency side, so grow that, because like I said earlier, it's fun meeting new people, but also I understand what's working and what's not in the YouTube space, and so which leads to vertical 2, which is software. There we can, by knowing vertical 1, I know what pain point to solve and what to build next for tools for creators. And right now we're 100% on YouTube, but who knows, maybe in the future go broader, we'll see. Number 3 is content. So this podcast is part of the content. Why we're on YouTube is I love the content creation world. Bigger pictures, I want to have like hundreds of channels under One of 10. From do you know Raka Raka by any chance? It's
No.
like a they would do like VFX fighting scenes of like Harry Potter versus Star Wars, a bit ridiculous but also pretty well produced. So they did that for 10 years, and then after 10 years they got a contract with A24, $4.5 million budget, which led to $100 million box office. But it's interesting to see that it's the 10 years of experience and all that to create that type of movie that led to bigger picture. So I'd like to do Hollywood level movies.
What was the movie?
Talk to Me, a horror movie in 2022. Horror movies are known that to have lower budget and high risk reward type thing. So yeah, that's vertical 3, just like create cool content basically. And vertical 4 is basically creator-led business. I'm pretty hyped about that. It's a big thing I want to do in the next few years is partner up with creators or build them up from zero to in a niche and then create a business out of it. So initially software, but maybe in the future, pretty much anything. So that's how I see a fun life for the next 30 years. And that's why I don't want to sell.
Do you code? Who builds your software now? Do you have a team?
My co-founder is
Okay.
the main guy, and we have a team now of two developers under him.
Cool. Very cool. That all sounds very fun. It seems like you guys have like a really fun like dynamic amongst the team, which makes us all like more enjoyable, but also I think higher potential long term.
Yeah, I that's how I live life. I live life on ROI on fun, basically. If there's two decisions to make, I'll just choose the one that has fun and no toxicity, and think of other people. That's my motto.
I think it's a great model.
Yeah, and for the team, I always ask them like, "What's your dream?" And what would you have fun in here? And then I try to lead them in whatever path they have, which is a question I'll ask you at the end of the pod. So guys, listen.
I know we just took an aside. We're like, actually, let's pause the podcast and just like talk more about your business.
Well, no, I mean revenue is something I want to talk with you, right? You're super public about it. I'm curious first, like how did you think about the price points of career science, like 1,999 per year and the 4,000 per year?
Well, I think a little bit like the market kind of tells you how they value things. So initially it was not that. It was like half of that. It was $9.99 per year for the standard tier, $19.99 for the VIP tier. We stepped that up to $14.99 and $24.99, and then eventually up even further. And it kind of came down to like, one, how am I valuing my time? Two, is this price in line with the customers that are coming in? So like for a community-based product, it's kind of crazy, but you will get more advanced people at a higher price point because they just look at price as like a heuristic of, is this for people like me?
Yeah.
If I raise the price even further, it would again change who comes into the community. It would probably be harder because like the more advanced you go, like the smaller the pool becomes. Mm-hmm. So you either have to have a larger audience to support that or have a very like targeted audience to support that. But I'm at a point now where I want membership in the lab to be like a no-brainer renewal. I don't want to chase new members all the time. Like I want this to be something where if you're in there, you're going to love it and you're going to continue renewing because as you know, it's a lot cheaper to have happy customers that renew than to continue trying to acquire new customers. And so I think the price point is at a good spot right now. And I actually am just focused on driving more and more value without increasing prices. We're in a time right now, I'm sure you see this in the software world, people are just raising prices constantly on people. Yeah. Like just constantly raising prices. And I think people are like getting really sick of it. So, you know, there's an interesting marketing play these days, I think, to say, hey, we're adding more value to your subscription, and also we're going to decrease prices. I think we're going to see some companies lean into that as a marketing play. You did it?
We did from $49 to $39 a month, and we're adding more features.
I love that. I think that's great. I think like if you tell the story, hey, like we're doing well because of your support, we're going to make your membership stronger, and also like scale enables us to pay back some of, you know, like to pass some savings on to you. Mm-hmm. I think that's going to create so much loyalty because the opposite is just rampant right now.
But what do you think about, so we do have our original, everything included 39, but we are thinking of a 99 a month and like putting like crazy features, AI related stuff. What do you think of that?
I think having tiers is smart. You know, okay. I don't think there's any problem with introducing a higher tier that offers a higher level of service. What people don't like is to feel like they're not given a choice and they're getting the same level of service or same level of value at a higher price. So I think introducing a higher priced plan that is not saying this thing that you're used to, we're actually moving that up into a higher priced plan now. I think that's a bad way to go about it. But to say everything that you get, you still get that. But by the way, we have this higher priced plan now that offers these things over here. I think it's totally legitimate.
Thanks. We'll try that then. Curious, how much did you make last year?
830,000 and some change.
Wow, that's crazy. How does that feel?
It felt amazing. I mean, the year before was like 565. It was a 58% increase, I think was the math. I'm not doing math live, but I think that's what it was. So it was really good. And I mean, there was a couple things that happened. Like I launched an all new digital product, and that drove like $140,000 in revenues. That's a big chunk.
Can you tell the viewers which one it was?
Yeah, that was called Creator HQ. I built like an operating system in Notion to run the creator science business, and people would see it and say, I want that. And so I productized it.
Is that how you think about products to add in the whole ecosystem?
It's validated in that I'm already using it. So I know it works for creators like me. Mm-hmm. And two, like I would share, like I do a lot of screen shares in the community to show people how I do certain things, and they would just see my Notion setup and say, can I have that? Like, what is going on here? What is that? So I think that's a good way to validate products. And, you know, it's also really stressful because it felt like we had an incredible year. And the calendar starts over and I look at what you have to earn each month to even just match last year's revenue. And it feels so daunting. Like, am I going to be able to do that again? Mm-hmm. And I'm trying to remove the pressure or expectation of that because it's felt really heavy. I like struggled a little bit in January trying to like get myself motivated because it all just felt so daunting to try to continue to grow. And honestly, like we don't need to continue to grow in any other way than to just be like happy with number go up.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to, as you were just saying, I'm trying to just follow the fun again and remove as much pressure from anything that I'm doing as possible. And fundamentally, if I keep making the community great, like the business will be fine.
Yeah.
So now this year, even though I have like these pulls to create more and more new things, I keep kind of pulling myself back and saying, would this serve the community though? Because everything I make, the community gets at no additional cost. Yeah. So if I make something, I want it to be something that's valuable to the community. And of course, then I can also sell it externally. But I want to think about the community first in everything that I do. We're doing our first in-person event for the community this year, like a fully designed, like 2-day experience. I'm really excited about that. I think that's going to be the future of online communities, is actually doing offline things. And yeah, just trying to reduce pressure. We took on too much at the close of last year, as you know. As a sponsor of the channel, like we overpromised and underdelivered in terms of how much we produced, and I felt like awful about that. And so now I'm going the other direction of like, all right, on the audio podcast, I'm not even taking sponsors right now because it's operationally more intense than it's worth to my peace of mind. And on YouTube, we're also kind of in a holding pattern, to be honest, because we want to hire another editor. We want to get the new studio up and running, and we just don't want to feel pressure to rush either of those things. Yeah. And I'm sure we'll bounce back in a couple months and be like, okay, we're rocking and rolling. We've got our feet under us. Our output is where we want it to be, and we're having fun, and now we can reintroduce those things. But when you're facing down the pressure of, can I hit the same revenue figures as last year? We had our best year of sponsorship ever last year, and I'm also saying like, we're not going to do sponsors for a minute. It just feels like we're fighting with an arm tied behind our back, and it's challenging, man. And these are champagne problems, of course, to say like, oh, we made so much money last year that I won't be able to do it again. But it's been psychologically weird.
But do you feel less stressed now?
Totally. When I allow myself to feel less stressed, when I allow myself to really just be like, we are doing well enough. Whatever happens, happens. Let's have some fun.
Doing well enough. You're doing great.
Yeah, I know. And we have like expenses, you know, we only have 2 full-time employees, my wife and I, but we have an extended group of people who support our work and we support them. So it's not that, you know, we need to earn enough to pay our people and run the business operationally, but we're pretty safely there.
Yeah, you're at a good margin, I'm sure. So where would the stress be from? For what? A number in mind or goal specific? Or
well, I don't know if this is true or not. And anyone who tells me it's not true, I suspect to be kind of lying. But basically, in my business, because I am in creator education, if I am teaching creators how to grow and do well, it feels like if I am not growing, then there's a misalignment, right? And so why follow me versus somebody else? So it feels like there's this existential risk of, if I don't continue to push and strive, people who follow me because they want to strive like me just won't do that. They won't follow along, they won't join the community, they won't whatever. So optically it feels hard to be like, I'm actually gonna, right size this, relax, have some more fun, push a little less hard. I think a lot of people will be like, well, I'm trying to push really hard actually, and so I'm gonna look over here instead. But that might be a problem I'm making up. I also know that there's a good chance that if I just relax and have fun, the work product will be better and the business will actually do better also. But I have to prove that out.
I've experienced that as well, basically. When I stopped thinking about numbers, it's basically when I went all in on YouTube and I just wanted to post whatever or have fun with it. That's when the money came in naturally, which is interesting. There's that, and there's also an important one, I think, is to not have a number in mind, because then you're always failing until you hit that number. And one example I always say is Justin Khan. He sold for $1 billion Twitch to Amazon, and he was still depressed because all his friends had made were basically the Reddit founder, Airbnb, Coinbase, so 100 bill plus or whatever. And that made him depressed. But if you just don't have a number, you just go with it and you don't compare to others.
I have let the number thing go just because I've never been able to. It's never been motivating to me. Like I had a coach one time, like actually back in the days when I was doing the mastermind, and was making enough money to live just me in a small apartment. Didn't have nearly the commitments that I do now as an adult. I was like, I need to push for, I think at the time it was like $100,000. I was like, I want to earn six figures. But I just I wouldn't do the activities necessary to get there because I was comfortable. Some arbitrary number doesn't make me uncomfortable enough to perform to it. And my mentor basically said, we perform to the level of our comfort, or like our discomfort, I guess is maybe the better way to put it. And so if I am trying to motivate myself to a number, I have to find a way to make myself uncomfortable without that number, and that doesn't seem healthy. So like I already have the comfort with just paying the bills and paying my people, and that's kind of enough for me, and whatever happens on top of that happens. But the level of discomfort rises when I commit to like hiring an incremental new person or function, because then expenses raise a little bit. So the average revenue needs to raise a little bit. And so I might push myself there a little bit this year, because, we would be able to get more done with another editor, with somebody else to help out in the community. There's certainly things I could outsource even more effectively.
No, for sure. I do feel that stress as well, hiring little by little. We're now 8, 9 at 1 of 10 now. And so expenses are there, but growth is there as well, which is good. But if something flops though, then it becomes stressful. So we got to make sure everything's in line. And so you said 140K Creator HQ. What is the rest?
Creator HQ, digital products as a whole, were just around 198,000 last year.
Wow.
Memberships were 421,000. Sponsorship was 142,000. Affiliates was 30,000. Royalties was 29,000, and services was 11,000.
Interesting. The 200K from digital products, that's just email blast, talk about it in the pod.
I have kind of a flow built out with a tool called Write Message, which I've actually invested in. It's this personalization and segmentation tool that pairs really nicely with your email software. So if you go to creatorscience.com, you're going to see a little toaster pop up and ask you some questions. Mm-hmm. And based on your responses to those questions, we make specific offers to you that we think are our best fit products at a preferred price for what you're trying to solve right now. And so that system, both on site and through email, generates the majority of our course sales. So digital products are Creator HQ and courses, basically. So about 140 of that was Creator HQ, about 60,000 of that was courses.
Actually, talking about tools, what tools do you use? You've mentioned a few that I have never heard of. So I'm curious, what are your tools?
I mean, I use a shit ton of software, to be honest.
I see that.
Like,
let's say your top ones, the most life-changing to you that you think people don't know about.
Okay, well, the website is built on Ghost.
Yeah, we use Ghost as well for
I am a big fan of Ghost. We do make some landing pages in Framer because Ghost is a little rigid in how you can design. It's like it's like a single column design.
By the way, side question, Framer, are you paying like the $600 thing where you gotta reverse proxy the name for your own domain name or that type of thing?
I don't think so. Okay. I think I'm paying like $30 a month or something. Yeah, Framer is very cheap.
Yeah. No, it's cheap, but it's just there were some things that was necessary for us. But again, anyways, you carry on.
I use Notion for managing everything. That's what we productized into Creator HQ. Kit is my email service provider.
Same, yeah.
That's big.
Expensive.
It is expensive, but it's like the most obvious ROI for me.
True.
Outside of maybe Circle is where I built my community. Teachable is where I have my courses, at least for now. I can see a future where I kind of consolidate into Circle since they have LMS now, but Teachable is where my courses are. That's kind of the big piece. I have Zapier as duct tape in between everything. I've always tried to choose best-in-class software for specific functions and then do the hard work of tying it together versus kind of picking an all-in-one.
Quick break from the pod to tell you about oneof10.com, a powerful tool to help you grow faster on YouTube. Check this out. Using One of 10, this creator took inspiration from this viral idea and combined it with this thumbnail concept. And the result? Her most viewed video with more than 2 million views. By focusing on the right idea, title, and thumbnail, you're setting your videos up to go viral. One of 10 includes a suite of tools specifically designed to highlight overperforming videos and spark inspiration to find your next viral idea in just minutes. And the best part? With code POD50, you'll get 50% off for life. That means just one video with 25,000 views can cover an entire year's cost. So if you want to grow your channel faster, head over to oneof10.com. Now back to the pod.
Because all-in-one software, you just won't have better functionality than a software that's very specific on what it tries to do well. Because that team will direct all the resources towards doing that one thing really well. And an all-in-one will have to fractionally direct their resources to all these other areas. So I think it's a good strategy for somebody who doesn't want to worry about the tech and just wants like good enough in all these ways. But if you really want to have like a best-in-class experience, I think you have to have a more diverse stack that you're willing to do some of the hard work of integrating together.
Yeah, I think you're pretty well optimized. Did you do on your own the whole newsletter funnel? I'm sure it's all complicated on your end. Or did you have a consultant?
No, I take it as like part of my duty as a creator educator to basically build a working knowledge of everything, which is exhausting and like super expansive and always growing. But I do feel like it is my duty to build a working knowledge of just about everything. And if I figure something out pretty well and it seems like something I can teach and then start delegating, I'll try to do that. But historically, I've been not great at delegating.
Which might change this year.
We're getting a little bit better. I have an assistant who's just wildly talented, and she does everything I ask so perfectly. So I've just pushed more and more on her plate, and she's never let me down. So I'm going to keep doing that.
What are you thinking this year to increase revenue?
I'm kind of not. I'm not thinking about it. Like, to me, I want to make the value of the membership even higher. And I guess the implicit idea there is it will continue to grow if I make it more valuable to members. We're doubling down on video, long form obviously, but even trying to do more in short form because we have such a great back-end system built out. It feels like if we get in front of more people, then revenue will grow. That's assuming that the content we make on the front end, the discovery content, is good. So we have to invest more time into making better videos and more videos. But if we do that, I think the business will grow just as it is.
Organically, yeah.
It'll be a little hard to replicate the revenue from Creator HQ last year because a lot of that was like a big splashy launch and then also a big promotion around Black Friday. So if I think about revenue this year, it feels like I do need to do some form of launch. And I don't know what that looks like for 2025 yet. I'm being kind of thoughtful about it because, again, if I create something new, I want to make sure that it's serving the community first and foremost.
That's fun. That's exciting. You're not sure yet where it's going, but I'm sure you're going to end up thinking of
it's exciting, but also there are a lot of days I sit around, I'm like, I don't know what to work on because I haven't fully committed to a plan yet. And that feels unproductive.
But as we've learned, with time, things get put in place.
We'll work it out. We'll get there.
You ever thought of a software?
I think about it all the time. My issue is there are only so many buses I can drive. So while I have like ideas and vision, I can't be the driver of the bus or the bus won't go. And I also I don't have space to do customer support. And I know software comes with a lot of customer support. So I've basically just been like keeping my eyes open and trying to find a good partner on that front if I wanted to go that direction. Because what I have is an audience of people that I think is hungry for a couple of ideas that I have. It's just, I can't build it and I can't drive it. And even though I have a vision for it, I feel like my biggest value add is actually the audience.
Fair. I mean, just saying we can build it. We can run it. Just saying, just putting it out there.
Okay. We'll talk about that.
We know the space, so
we'll talk about that. When we were talking earlier, I'm like, okay, flagged for a future conversation, perhaps.
So you talked about doubling down on content, right? I'm just curious, what do you think led to your growth on both YouTube and audio only?
Well, the audio only show doesn't really grow, to be honest. Okay. Like it stays pretty stable and has for a while, and like we lose some listeners, we gain some listeners, and net, it just seems to be kind of where it's at. I would love for it to grow more. I thought that success on YouTube would make the audio show grow, and as we were kind of talking about earlier, it's just not the case. Like people who find the show on YouTube and like it, they don't care about audio. So like the only way you grow audio is existing audio listeners and who are interested in your show. And I've done a couple of experiments, and it just has not been super productive. Word of mouth still drives the audio world, it seems. And the only way to get word of mouth is to make an exceptional show. Not even just a good show that people like. It needs to be an exceptional show so that people actually talk about it and advocate for it, which is a really high bar, actually. So, still figuring out growth on audio. Growth in video, this isn't going to be a sexy answer, but like most of our growth comes from a couple of outperforming videos. I'm sure you see this time and time again. Like in terms of subscriber growth, most subscribers come from a small number of videos that outperformed the other ones. So it's like, how do you grow on YouTube? You have very successful videos. You don't need a lot of them, but you need to have some of them. And that's kind of how you grow.
Is that how you saw your growth on YouTube? Like one would pop and then you would be at a new floor type thing? And then
yep, for the most part.
Biggest one, Jenny Hoyos. Any idea why that one specifically blew up?
Dude, if I knew, I would do it every time. But I think, I mean, analytically, what I know is true is it had a far higher CTR in the first 24 hours than most of our videos do. So it's like if I am able to have a higher CTR in the first 24 hours, I mean, I'm not a YouTube strategist. Maybe this is bullshit. But as someone who just looks at analytics in content on different platforms, the way I would approach YouTube is I look at the CTR after releasing it like a hawk. And I'm pretty good at telling like where this video is going to land relative to our existing catalog just based on that. It's kind of assuming that the AVD will be relatively consistent, which it is. But it seems at this point that really the success of a video, Matt, hinges on the click-through rate in the first 24 hours more than anything.
It's what we always say. Idea, title, thumbnail is 85% of success of a video. So yes, you are correct. And for the CTR number, if it's relative to other similar length of videos, then yeah, it's a good way to judge. I do think shorts, the fact that she's which is huge in shorts, is a big outlier, I think, a bit everywhere in the YouTube space, the YouTube strategy space, where shorts-related content, shorts-related education content will blow up.
Yeah.
That I've seen as well. So that's what I'm wondering as well. Did that bring the right audience for you? Did you see an increase in business actually from that insane viewed?
It's directionally correct enough in that everybody who came in is creating content. So that's that's the biggest thing, right?
Amazing.
Like nobody's gonna watch that video who isn't interested in creating content. I think there's probably a whole lot of waste, quote unquote, in terms of, are these people truly a best fit? Not necessarily, but I don't think it hurt us, if that makes sense. And recently, when a video like doesn't perform to your expectations, the push is, well, let's try a new packaging concept to see if we can revive this video. And that has worked to varying degrees, but not a ton. What we did last month is we said, why don't we actually revise the packaging on our best performing video? Let's see if we can make a better thumbnail for Jenny and see if we do an A/B test if it outperforms the original. Ooh. And we made a different thumbnail. It did outperform the original, and now that video actually has new life and is performing better.
It's doing this now?
It's performing better than it has in the past several months.
Oh, wow, nice.
Which is fascinating. But I mean, it makes sense. It's like if you have a video that's still getting impressions, if you can improve the packaging on that, like that's probably going to have a higher return than a video that's not getting impressions that you wish had done better. It's been a fun experiment there to see, like, actually we've meaningfully increased our month-over-month views just from that one video by making the thumbnail.
I often say you're one video away to changing your life, but sometimes I also say you're one title thumbnail change to changing your life. Like I've changed thumbnails and titles for videos that were 2 years old, and then went from stuck at 100K views to then jump up to 1 million, which is insane.
Yeah, we have some videos that we should probably try that on too. It's the distribution of our views is really interesting in that we have this massive outlier. Like it's going to hit 4 million views.
Yeah.
Crazy outlier.
Yeah.
And then we have one video that's over, I guess we have 2 videos over 200,000 and then a couple over 100,000 and everything else is below that. But when I look at other channels that I kind of aspire to, especially interview shows that are doing well, they tend to have like a bunch of hits in the several 100,000 view range, which we just have none of. Like we don't have anything above 300,000. And it's just an interest. I don't even know what the data on our video would have to look like that we would exceed the 200,000 but stay below where we're at with Jenny, because the AVD on Jenny's video at this point isn't crazy, and neither is the CTR. Like it got pushed like crazy. So yeah, it's kind of like I don't even know what the path to a 600,000 view video on our channel looks like, but it's an interesting distribution.
I mean, our goal right now, it's a 10K views floor is what we're hoping for this year. It's actually a question for you. What do you think we should focus on to hit 10,000 views floor this year? Is it just good selection of guests? What would you say?
Well, for an interview show, I think guest selection is actually overrated, because the tendency for an interview show is to pick like a big name guest and then you package around the identity of that guest. And that can be kind of hit or miss depending on your audience. The example I like to give is actually on Colin and Samir's channel. They had Scott Galloway on, and they like packaged it around the identity that is Scott Galloway. But their audience didn't really know who Scott Galloway was, so that didn't actually perform very well. Even though he's a well-known person to certain circles, that video didn't get pushed to those circles. It got pushed to Colin and Samir's audience, who didn't actually know who Scott Galloway was. So when we do guest selection, we think about our channel as conversational education. I'm basically trying to get a guest to come in and teach a workshop without having to prep for it or know they're doing it. That's part of why Jenny's video was so successful. She gave so many specific examples and frameworks, and it was like a literal workshop. And I'm trying to get that out of every guest without putting effort on their plate to like prepare a workshop. But the way we select a guest is like, what is a topic that needs to be covered for our audience, and who is the best teacher for that topic? And then I have to do a really good job as an interviewer to get a workshop out of them through just questions, right? So I don't even think it's like getting big names, because big names are big in certain subgroups, and if that subgroup is not your audience, it just doesn't matter. when we do get a big name, we think, what is the subject that this person can go deep on that matters to our audience?
Ooh, that's a good
so
one.
we package around an idea much more than the identity, because also from a packaging perspective,
Yeah, true.
if you just have an interview, it's like, this is a wide-ranging interview with Jay where we talk about A, B, and C. It's going to be hard to title that. It's much better to be like, this is Jay Clouse on community. And that's the package, and that's the extent of the interview. Because otherwise, if you say we talk about these, you either say we talk about these 3 things, which is not a sexy package, or you say we talk about this one thing, and if you put that payoff at the beginning of the interview, after people watch it, they're going to drop off and not watch the rest. If you put that payoff later in the interview, people are going to drop off early because they're going to be like, I thought we were talking about community. I thought we were talking about this specific thing. So interviews to me, it's like, let's pick a singular idea and go really deep on it. And if we have a big name guest doing that, even better. It's like a 2-for-1, but otherwise, like packaging around the idea more than the identity.
Yeah, I think you played it well with Dr. K, for example. It could
Yes.
have been any directions really. You could have gone streamer way, and that would have probably flopped. But the fact that you went with psychology and YouTube combined made it make sense with all your audience, even if people are not YouTubers, but more content creators in general. That was a smart play.
Thank you. I think you guys can do it. The interview game is challenging, but when it works really well because people will watch for a long time. And as we saw with folks coming into the community from the audio podcast, when people watch for a long time, they really build a relationship with you.
Nice. Yeah, I'm excited for this. This was the thing I was the most excited actually for this year because yeah, I mean, I just like meeting people and just talk to people. I'm not the best at the front of camera, but I think after 500 episodes, I'll get better. It'll take time, but like this is fun for me. So yeah.
The thing that kind of helped me is people want to listen to a conversation where it feels like the two people have rapport, they have a relationship, because then it kind of feels like you're a friend in the room. When you're meeting somebody for the first time, it's hard to like have that, obviously.
True.
But there's this idea of like presumed rapport where you can kind of assume that there's goodwill here and they're interested in being friendly with you. But there is also like a line that you can't cross where it becomes awkward, where you become like, you act like you're this person's best friend, but you've never met them. So,
right.
Take that to the extent that you can.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, anyone who shows up on your show, they want to make a good product. They want to make a good episode. So if you have some presumed rapport and could make it fun and engaging and interesting, even though it's your first time meeting, that is good.
Okay, nice. I'll try that. I'm curious as well, how during the interview you manage everything that's going through, right? Talking to the person, but then thinking of what he's talking and then replying to it, but also thinking about the questions you want and the structure you want for the pod. How do you manage all that?
Well, we like to prepare a structure and have the packaging in mind before the interview. So I know at a high level, what is the big idea of this conversation? And that's kind of like a North Star.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll prepare questions and order them in an arc that I think makes sense. But then that prep is pretty much just prep. When I show up, I'm really trying to just have a conversation as I would if it was not recorded. Because if you are thinking about your next question, you're not listening. And if you're not listening, then you're going to miss doors that get opened. And as the listener on the other end of the finished product, they're going to hear this person talking. He's going to open a door, and then you're not going to follow it because you weren't listening, and they're going to get frustrated. So even if you prep and you have an idea for what I want to cover, that'll kind of melt into the back of your mind and guide you in the conversation. But ultimately, you want to be listening.
Today, that's what I tried actually, more of listening and replying to what you're saying more than like the list question and going one by one, which I think led to the more seamless conversation. Can you roast my background? Anything I could change or make it better?
It's visually interesting. It's a big window. I don't typically see windows in backgrounds. It looks like a school or something. What's out there?
It's another building. It's a condo. Yeah.
Interesting. Well, I like the idea of having a view to the outside. I don't know. I don't really have much criticism here, to be honest.
Okay. All right. I'll go
I
with
like
that.
your positioning in the frame.
I'll take that.
I think you should upgrade your mic. I think that's a Yeti.
Yeah.
Yeah, you got to get a better mic.
Yeah, the Shure, what is it? Shure M7?
Shure MV7 would be good. They also have a version of the Shure SM7B called the SM7DB now, which is what I'm upgrading to in the new studio. Ooh. It's the SM7B used to require like a cloud lifter, like another tool to make the audio work. Anyway, they integrated it all into this new version. So I'm excited to try that out. This is a Rode Podcaster. It's treated me very well. If I don't end up liking the sound of the SM7DB, I'm going right back to this.
Good to know.
But a Yeti is not very directional.
Right.
You need something that's a little bit more, has better noise rejection and sound capture.
Okay, yeah, good to know. I'll keep that in mind. Well, actually, I do want to upgrade in the next few weeks, so I'm probably gonna get the Shure M7VD.
Shure MV7 is gonna be it's a good bet.
I'm also curious. You've interviewed a lot of creators, right? Which interviews stood out the most?
That's tough. I think about episode 2 of the audio show all the time. That was with James Clear, and it was shortly after he released the book. That one is incredible, just because James is such an amazing thinker. 2 guests that have come on that have blown me away in terms of who they are as people. Number 1 is Rishikesh Shirway. He is the host of Song Exploder. It's, I think, like the greatest podcast ever made. Incredible podcast.
Okay.
Super successful. It's won like Apple's Podcast of the Year a bunch of times. And he was even more kind and gracious in person than I could have expected, which is just so rare. And similarly, Guy Raz was the same way, the guy who was How I Built This. Both those guys, never met him before, and they showed up and they were so kind and so generous and so respectful of me. And yeah, I'll just never forget that.
Is there one piece of advice you remember from all those interviews, one that really stuck that you're using like every day?
I think about the James episode most frequently, and he had a couple of like sound bites in there where he was talking about the difference between A+ work and even A- work. He's like, most people would be happy with an A-, but really all of the results are at the tail end. It's an exponential thing. Mm-hmm. And so he's like always trying to find what is the A+ version of doing this, because the return on that like incremental improvement is massive. He also talked about this idea he called signals of progress.
Okay.
And this is any project you're doing, any work that you're doing, we just kind of need to feel like we're progressing forward to feel good about it and continue on. And in his example, he was talking about how hard it was writing Atomic Habits because there was no public feedback on the writing. And so in this giant project that is writing a book, if you weren't getting signals of progress, it can be really difficult and like defeating. But I think this plays through in any creative work where a lot of creators who are getting started, they're publishing publicly, but they're not getting any signals of progress because nobody's seeing it, or they're getting very limited feedback. And so if you are able to identify small signals of progress, even when you're not getting a lot of feedback, I think it's kind of the thing you need to keep going, which people in the early stages, I think, need to hear.
Nice. Great advice. Just last question on the podcast again. I'm looking here, but I can also look here. Do you think there's a difference, or it doesn't matter?
I think that most of the time you want to look into the camera.
Yeah.
But if you only look into the camera and you never break eye line, it can be really intense to the viewer.
Okay.
So whenever I am talking to the guest, but I'm looking off to my screen here like this, I get comments of people saying that it's distracting, that I'm not looking at the guest. But early on in the videos, I would stare down the barrel of the camera without breaking eye contact the whole time, and people found that to be a little off-putting as well. So I think the sweet spot is talking to the lens as if you're talking to the person. And I literally now have a teleprompter, so I'm looking at you when I'm looking at the lens.
Exactly.
But I am giving myself permission to look off camera sometimes because it feels a little bit more natural and less intense.
These are the last 2 questions, basically. 1, so imagine YouTube channels like a stock, right? Mr. Beast is a blue chip. Jenny Hoyos is a growth stock. What is one channel you'd invest in for the highest return on investment?
Man, that's really hard. I came across this channel Let me make sure I get the name. There's a channel called Bobby Fingers, and he has only posted 9 videos, and it's incredible. And I will let you discover it for yourself.
Whoa, I've never seen it. That's interesting. Okay.
It's unlike anything I've ever seen. I recommend the video Jeff Bezos Rowing Boat.
I've never heard or seen it. That's awesome. That's rare. That's a great answer.
He mostly creates tiny dioramas, but it's completely insane. You are not going to expect what these videos play out like. So enjoy.
Amazing. Nice. Thanks. And last question is, what is your dream? And not the dream where, you buy the house, cars, you have $10 million, whatever. And say you have unlimited money. It's more, what would you do every day forever?
Man, this is going to sound so lame, but I like doing nothing. I love doing nothing. I love watching long-form television series, and I would just watch everything on Hulu, on Netflix, anything that's like character-driven, plot-driven. I just love it. I also want to, aspirationally as a career, I want to write books.
Ooh, yeah, I could totally see that doing very well. Damn, yeah.
I need to settle on what is the message I care about sharing so much that I'm going to invest 5 years into writing the book on it. Because it's a huge project, and I haven't decided yet. So I think it would be between writing books and watching TV forever.
That sounds like a very nice, fun life, beautiful family life as well.
Yeah, no. A lot of people are like, I want to travel the world, and I'm like, actually, I want to stay in my living room and watch everything on Hulu.
Any favorite series you're watching recently?
I'm watching The Traitors right now. It's a game show on Peacock, and it's incredible. I mean, I'm a longtime fan of Survivor, which I think is the best reality game show ever. Mr. Beast Games is pretty good, but you can see, as a Survivor fan, you can see so many places that he's just blatantly ripping off parts of Survivor and not doing it nearly as well.
Yep.
Huge Survivor fan, and second behind Survivor is The Traitors on NBC, which is only 3 seasons old. It's in the middle of the 3rd season right now. And both of these games are it's like human game theory. It's awesome. It's like lies and deception and getting people to align with you. It's just fantastic.
Is that a reality TV or
it's a reality competition show. I shouldn't say game show. It's a reality competition show. And
oh wow.
In the American version, the fun thing is all of the cast members are, for the most part, other reality television stars. It's like some of the best Survivor players are playing with people from Big Brother and Housewives, Below Deck. It's all of these great game players coming together to play a new game. That's
fun.
That's
a
so
fun one. And I'll finish on this question since you're into that world. What do you think of Beast Game?
I think it's incredibly ambitious. I think the beauty of competition, reality competition shows, is so much more in the stories of the individual. And I think they kind of understood that, but they went a lot more into the spectacle side of things than the story side of things. And the best moments in the show are actually the story pieces of it.
When you know the person, because I'm on the last episode of last week, and I still don't know any of them really. So that was a bit disappointing.
The magic of Survivor is that you get bought into the characters so early on in the season. You are watching for those characters. Same with Traitors. You should feel heartbroken when certain characters leave the game because you were so into them. And I don't feel that way about any of the characters on Beast Game so far.
Well, Jay, that was so much value packed. That's crazy. But Jay, thank you for coming on.
Richard, grateful for you. Grateful for 1 of 10. Thanks for having me.
And guys, if you want to watch another episode, you can watch the Justin Moore one right here, a good friend of ours.